I am now going to turn it over to Teddy.
Perfect. And I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. And while I'm doing that, I always feel like I should say talk amongst yourselves, but let me get going here. And just a heads up. I have been battling that's not what I want there. Okay, now can you just see the big screen and not the notes?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. I've been battling allergies. And so at least on one webinar or our meeting so far this week, I've had a coughing fit. I have not had my coughing fit for the day, so it could happen during this time, but just bear with me and hopefully it won't happen. So today is the first session of 3 of our culturally responsive classroom. And I just want to say that this is a topic that is near and dear to my heart. And I want you to keep an open mind as we go through this, because I think sometimes we have a preconceived or whatever notion or idea of what culturally responsive really means. And so I'm hoping that this will maybe broaden that view for you, and maybe so you look at it in a different light. Again, this is y'all's time. And so I want you to make sure that you ask questions. We're going to have some interaction, so make sure that you're ready to participate. So here we go. Oops, now that I switched things, my little cover there is there. All right, so we're going to start out by watching Tell Me About It, one of our Already Rosie videos.
Royce, while you finish your snack, we're gonna play a little game. I'm gonna interview you like on TV, okay? All right, what's your name?
Royce.
Hi, Royce. How old are you?
3.
3. Are you a big boy?
Yes.
Yes. Well, as a big 3-year-old, what toys do you like to play with?
The Legos.
The Legos? You like to play with Legos?
Yeah.
Who do you play Legos with?
Jack.
Let me see. Who do you play with?
Yeah.
What is your favorite color?
Blue.
Blue.
And white and yellow and blue and green.
That's a lot of colors. Who's your favorite person? Yes, good answer. Okay.
Now, I think I've shared that video before, because I think it's a great icebreaker. I think it's a perfect video to show, like at the beginning of the year, if you're having a parent meeting, and then letting them, you can pose a question for them to kind of turn and talk or interview a person next to them. But we're going to use it this morning or this afternoon actually to talk about these questions real quickly here. And so so we're not going to go into breakout rooms because we're a small group, but I want you just to, unless y'all don't share, and then I'm going to put you in breakout rooms. So everybody share. Or you can put in the chat. I want you to talk about one or all of these. What languages were spoken in your home? Tell me about your family's beliefs concerning education. And what are some examples of your family's traditions? So does anybody want to go first on one or all of those?
Church.
Monica, are you
She
going?
was in daycare. I went to her. For one
Church.
summer. Yeah. She was in daycare.
Oh,
It has to be.
her husband.
Oh, I can share.
Okay, thanks.
So some of the languages that we speak in my home are mostly Spanish. Yeah, not much English. My parents don't know a lot of English. They know a little bit, but the only people I speak English at home will be like my brother or like my little sister. And that would be all. And some of my family's beliefs concerning education, well, coming here to the United States, it was always like, like prepare yourself, go to school so you can have like a better education than us. Coming from like a country that education wasn't very important. So to them, education was always a big concern because they wanted me to go to school, to finish high school, to get a diploma, to go to college, and I did. So that's the good thing. And they were very proud when I actually got my bachelor's. And well, because, and I know that in their era, like their parents were always like, no, it's always like work, don't go to school, but you have to work. Work is more important than school. So to them, that was something that they changed in their generation to me. And some of the examples of my family traditions, well, just around the holidays, we have our own little traditions like cooking meals together, or just like spending time in our own quality way. And our food, I'm from El Salvador, so our food is very different. So sometimes those traditions can be different than other people. So and we always follow those. And but those are some of mine.
Okay, good, thanks. Anybody else wanna weigh in there real quick? Penny said, my family traditions are that we have seafood, oh wow, on Christmas Eve, and have a gift and a gift exchange. We also have a destination Christmas with the whole family every other year. This year it was, how cool, what a cool tradition. Anybody else wanna share?
Yeah.
Somebody want to share? All right.
Abby, you were unmuted just for a minute. Did you want to share? Did I accidentally mute you?
Who are you talking to, Shauna?
Abby,
I'm sorry, I forgot to mute myself, but I mean, I can share.
Go
What was
ahead.
the question though? Because I just got in the meeting.
Oh, just what were the languages that are spoken in your home, or were spoken, if there were different languages, or your family's beliefs about education, or some examples of your family's traditions?
Well, like me, I'm a native Spanish speaker. However, my husband is not. So, mostly the language we speak at home will be like English and Spanish at the same time. My poor kids are probably confused. But we're trying to teach them Spanish because they're learning a lot of English at school. And our traditions are pretty mixed because I'm from Mexico, my husband is from here, and then around Christmas time they like to cook like this potato casserole, ham, and I like to cook like, I don't know how you say mole in English. It's like a sauce and some meat in it. So we have like a mixed kind of tradition during Christmas time. But yeah,
Good. Well, thank you all.
yeah.
And reason why it's important for you to reflect on your background and your just traditions and all of those things is that whether we know it or not, they influence how we look at the families that we work with. And so when we talk about cultural wealth, now I think already we've talked about like the assets, the familial asset or the navigational assets, or those pieces, strengths that families bring to the table. But it also includes language, values, lived experiences, traditions, and beliefs. And so just with my family, I am not a native Spanish speaker. I'm not even an accidental Spanish speaker. I speak English only. Texan, but Texan is not, recognized as a legitimate second language. So I just have English. I just have English to claim. I am white. I am middle class. But even though I don't have a different race or a different ethnicity, there are lived experiences and traditions and beliefs that make up who I am and make me unique. So for me, family is huge. My children and my grandchildren, so you can see our whole big family together. It is important for us that we spend time together. We We go on vacation every summer together. Being outdoors and hiking has always been a part of who we are. Holidays are huge to me. Christmas, of course, is just being together with family. All of those things are important. Part of that is because I grew up in the military. And so that's my lived experience. We were moving every 3 or 4 years. And so my sisters, of whom I have 5, were my friends. And so because we were moving, every couple of years, our family was our social group, all of that. And so that has carried on into when we had our family. And so my family is extremely, extremely important. Kind of not really a negative, but it is part of my lived experience that influences how I think about things and think about things that families do. And it's a piece of this cultural diversity that I have to work on, is having been raised in the military and predominantly in the South, which, the South is a little different from the rest of the country. I was raised in a very strict, I guess, manners or whatever family. And so we said, not because necessarily it was polite or it was a Southern thing, but it was a military thing to say, yes, ma'am, no, sir, yes, sir, all of those things. I answered the telephone at home saying, Gibson's residence, Teddy Gibson speaking. Now, how many of you all answer the phone that way? No, we just pick up the phone and say hello. And so when I got married, and I would say, Fullenwater residence, Teddy Fullenwater speaking, my husband was like, what in the heck are you doing? What are you saying? But that was a lived experience for me. And so I I have a hard time when children will say, yeah, no, okay, because that was not my lived experience. That was a sign of disrespect. But really, in actuality, in a lot of families, that's not a sign of disrespect. I grew up where you called everybody Mrs. So-and-so, Mr. So-and-so. And so when my children started referring to their friends' parents by their first name, I was like, that is so disrespectful. But that's what they had been asked to be called. And so all of our lived experiences become part of who we are and how we view the rest of the world. And we have language and values and lived experiences and traditions and beliefs. And so do each of our families. Does that make sense as a way to look at your families, but also reflecting on your cultural diversity and who you are, and how that might persuade or influence how you look at families? Anybody want to comment? Lois said she also lived in Germany for a few years, and since she was young, she picked up the language quickly from her preschool teachers. Of course, lost it when they came back. Germany is a great place. It is a great place to go back and to visit. And so I think that all of those things, like I said, impact us. Another thing is when you have families either from another culture many, many, many times, or again from their lived experience, that is going to influence how they support their child and how they interact with you. So think about some of your families as I'm giving these examples and see if any of them relate to you. I had, when I was in the classroom, I had a family that was from Japan. They were native Japanese. The Japanese culture, for the most part, honors and respects education and puts the teacher on a pedestal. They have extremely high expectations for their children. It's kind of like Catherine, you saying that, coming from a country where education is not necessarily a big deal, your parents put a lot of emphasis on you getting an education. And so when I conferenced with this parent, these parents at the beginning of the year, after the beginning of the year assessment, the little girl, I think, knew all of her letters, upper and lowercase, and sounds at the very beginning of kindergarten, all except for like 2. And I'm thinking, wow, this is incredible. She is so far above so many of the other children. The parents were devastated and wanted to know what did they need to do at home to make sure that she knew those, like by the end of the week. And I kept trying to say, oh my gosh, no, don't worry about it. Oh my gosh, no, oh my gosh, I mean, what she knows is incredible. But I wasn't valuing and honoring that belief and that value system in education and honoring their belief system. And so I should have said, well, here are some things you can do to honor that. A colleague of mine works with a lot of Head Starts that have Indigenous families. And I don't know what tribe in particular she supports, but one of the ways that they calm infants down, that is part of their culture, is doing it on those baby boards, where they, they tie them. I mean, that sounds horrible, but they, they have little, they're pretty ties, that the baby is just basically strapped onto a little board. And they say that, it is comforting. They feel secure. It's kind of like those sleep sacks that babies are put in. And so this particular colleague was saying, she said, when that was first shared with me, I was horrified. She said, I'd never heard of that before. And she said, but I started asking about that. And that is a way that that is a practice they use to calm children down. And she said, now that is a harmless practice. She said, where the difficulty comes in is if a culture or if a family has a belief or a practice that can be harmful. And so it's recognizing all of those things. And again, the traditions and the beliefs that your families have. Does anybody have an example similar to that to share? May not be as extreme.
I do.
Okay, good.
We have a lot of families that come from the Middle East and Africa here at Educare.
Mhm.
And for the longest time, we had issues with babies being left in the car, especially when it got cold.
Right.
And I had one mom that kept doing it. And then when she'd bring the baby in, she would leave him at the top of the hallway and walk to get her kids. And I finally just had to sit down and, with good positive intent, ask her, what is going on?
Right.
And what she told me, it was enlightening. She said, from where she's from, you grocery shop and leave the baby in the car. Bad mothers bring their babies out into the store and expose them to germs and cold.
Right. Wow.
So she left him at the top of the hallway so he was not exposed to toddler germs.
Right.
I mean, it was just, you just see a random baby seat with the baby in it, top of the hallway. And we have long hallways if you've ever been to Educare Lincoln.
Right.
So yeah, and that put it into perspective. Yeah. And so we came up with you can tuck the baby behind the front desk with the front desk lady. And now even moms that are from this culture tuck the baby behind the desk with the front desk lady.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
That's a perfect example. That is a perfect example. And I think that, when I was young and dumb, I wouldn't have said exactly this to the parent, but it would have been along of, what the heck are you doing here? And now as we've learned about, cultural diversity and just really just a matter of respect, we know, okay, that might be a cultural thing. And rather than judging, I need to find out what is behind that practice. Why is she, doing that and things like that. I have Vietnamese friends that still, when they come over to my house, take their shoes off because they say, oh, it's such a nice house. We don't want to bring dirt in. And I'm like, no, it's not a nice house at all. There's already dirt in here. Come on, I got my shoes on. But that is a very serious thing to them. And so I think recognizing those now, when the practice from a culture or from, a family or a tradition or whatever, poses that it could be harmful to the child, then yes, you do want to intervene while still valuing that, but helping them to see, at least in the school setting, this is, this cannot be done, or, whatever. Same goes with language. I'm sure all of you all have children that from now, every once in a while in your classroom will use a word that you're like, no way, buddy, we're not saying that at school. And again, when I was young and dumb and just started out, I would say, oh, that's an ugly word. We don't say that word. But then as I got older and my children got older and I started hearing words that their families said that we didn't allow in our home, and things like that, it was like, well, that's their belief system. That's their lived experience. So what I can say at school is we don't use that word at school. And so really taking the time and thinking about every single one of your families in terms of language, values, lived experiences, traditions, and their beliefs. And then how does that intersect with what you're trying to do in your classroom and in your setting there? One quick example is I have tried to get teachers to stop saying, and this is a Southern thing, I think, but I've tried to get teachers to quit saying, look at me when I talk to you. Because in many cultures, it is disrespectful to look somebody in the eye, for children to look adults in the eye. And so that is a very American thing or a very Southern thing, I'm not sure which. And so I have tried to help teachers and myself say, look at me when I'm talking to you, look me in the eye. That for many, many cultures and people, that is a sign of disrespect. So keep that in mind as we go through. So I love this quote from Zaretta Hammond from her book, Culturally Responsive Teaching in the Brain. I think the thing I like is about where it's the title is promoting authentic engagement. And so the quote, becoming culturally responsive starts with genuine caring that recognize the unique gifts and talents of every child, particularly when that child doesn't look or sound like you. Imagine going through school without feeling affirmed for the way that you speak, think, or see the world. I bet that doesn't generate a lot of happy feelings. And I really think that quote could just stop with being culturally responsive starts with genuinely caring. And genuinely caring transforms to all of those languages, cultures, beliefs, values, and traditions. Genuinely caring about not only each child, but their family. And all of those things that make that child and that family unique. And I can imagine that if you go to school, in a school where you are the only child of color, and none of the books or the dolls or none of the things in the classroom, there's nothing in that classroom that looks like you, I can imagine that wouldn't be a happy place, or that you might feel that you don't even really particularly belong because there's nothing that you see that you can connect to. One of the easiest and quickest things you can do to let families of all of your families that speak different languages know that they are welcomed in your classroom is to simply put hi or hello or welcome in your classroom, by your door, by the center door, whatever. And you can Google that easily. How do you say hello in Khmer? How do you say welcome in Dari? How do you say, welcome, whatever, in German or Spanish or whatever? Think about if you spoke a different language and you, well, if you travel and you go to a foreign country and you say, and you see welcome, or you see the menu in English, there's a little part of you that's like, oh my gosh, yes, thank you, thank you, thank you. I can read that. I know what that means. So think about just posting welcome in your classroom for those families to see. So as I said with that first slide, or that slide about the families and the cultures and beliefs and things like that, cultural diversity is more than just looking at a dual language learner, because that cultural diversity, like I said, I am culturally diversified and I am white and speak only English. I am not a second language learner and I am not from another country. And so your dual language learners have added diversity to them. So when we think about the dual language learner, what do you think, and y'all can unmute yourself and share, what do you think we mean the dual language learner? Who is a dual language learner? What do you think that means? Anybody?
Maybe someone who's trying to learn, like an example, we have a lot of kids that they're Spanish speakers, like natives, and then they go into school to a new language, like English. That will be a dual language learner.
So when I came to the United States, I was into the dual language program. So to me, the dual language program was like Spanish, the classes of Spanish, where I felt really happy because I already knew that language. I was like, oh my gosh, this is what I know. And then it was my English classes where I was like learning a new language, where I was like also going into the ESL as well too. But to me, it was something like where I knew my native language, and then it was also like learning another new language, which was English. But I know now there's a lot of the dual language can be for anybody. Maybe they know English and then they're going into the Spanish, and learning another new language too. So that was what dual language was to me when I was little and growing up.
Okay, good. And Penny said someone from a different country who is learning English as well, or learning the language of another country they are in while only knowing their native language. So it doesn't have to necessarily be tied to English, even though I think in the United States, we'd like to think we own the term dual language, and it's anybody learning a language other than English. And all of you guys are correct. And dual language learner could be someone who is, who speaks a second language at birth, all the way to someone who is 64 years old and decides to learn a second language. I could actually become a dual language learner if I would commit to trying to learn Spanish. So it doesn't just have to be at the younger age. It also can be someone growing up in a family where they are speaking English and everyone else around them is speaking another language. And so my point is, the dual language learner is a huge, broad definition of what that can mean. And I think in the education setting, we have kind of pigeonholed them into saying, oh, they're just Spanish children trying to learn English, when in fact, they are much broader than that. It encompasses a lot of people. Many of you all probably have children who speak English in the classroom, but their parents speak Spanish, and they maybe speak limited Spanish. So they don't even speak, they speak better English than they do Spanish. And they come with their parent to meetings or to things, and the child is actually doing the translating for the parent. And so that is, that can be another form that dual language takes. Penny also added, I have one at my childcare right now who is second and learning to speak both English and Ukrainian. Mom speaks Ukrainian and dad speaks mainly English, but also Ukrainian. I think that's fascinating. And I want you guys to remember that one of the things, Rosie has several videos in the Research and Answer library on dual language learners and the importance of valuing that home language. And so the last thing we want to do is to tell a parent, and we used to do this 40 years ago in Texas. I didn't, but this was the thought. Don't speak your home language at home. You need to be speaking English, because how else are they going to learn to speak English? And so I challenge you to think, if you all of a sudden were picked up and moved to China, your husband gets transferred and you go, and you have young children, and you put them in school because it's your belief system that school is important. And so you put them in the local school and they only speak Chinese. And that teacher comes out at the end of the day and says, don't speak English at home. They're never going to learn Chinese. Only speak Chinese to them at home. You've just yanked out their security blanket. And how are they going to speak English? I mean, only Chinese at home if I don't know Chinese to begin with. And so what we know, particularly with young children, is that we want that home language still being spoken. Because when we learn early literacy behaviors, I didn't say alphabet, but when we learn early literacy behaviors, we learn them in our native language. And so if I learn how to hold a book, how to turn the pages, the difference between the print and the picture, when I learned that as an English speaking young child, I don't have to relearn how to hold a book in Spanish. I don't have to relearn how to hold a book the Ukrainian way. Early literacy behaviors, concepts of print that marks down on a paper represent a message. That is all learned in our native language, with the exception of some cultures where the book is backwards. But even that, you hold the book and you turn the page, and there's print and white space and pictures. When I then go, when it's age appropriate, to learn how to read in Spanish or Ukrainian or whatever language, all I have to do then is learn the differences between the two language. Does that make sense? Tell me if it doesn't. Oh, good, Penny. I was just going to say, learn a few key words in that language. And she said, dobra means good. See, now we've all learned a Ukrainian word, so we could consider ourselves bilingual speakers if we use that word. All right, so I want you, as you look at your children, and you may not have anybody that speaks a different language this year, but my belief is you can't be in education very long before sooner or later you are going to get a child that speaks a second language. So what are some of the benefits of children who come to us speaking more than one language? The cognitive benefits, and this is research-based, is that they have a better understanding of math concepts. They develop strong thinking skills. They are better at using logic. They are better at focusing, remembering, and making decisions. They have an easier time learning to read in a second language, and they are motivated to learn. Now, I kind of grappled with why would they be better at math concepts? Why would they be more analytical or logical thinking? But when you think about learning a second language, there's a process, there's a logic to it. And so if you are learning a second language and you learn a second language or a third language, the ability to do that means that you have better logical thinking skills. So it does make sense. And then, let me go here. Then emotionally, we know from research, and of course, this is not 100% of every single child, but for the norm, they have an easier time maintaining strong family ties with family culture and community. They have an easier time building a strong sense of self, which is developed from culture and from home, that home language. They have an easier time learning social and emotional skills in their home language and culture. So I don't have to learn how to do self-regulation in English and then learn how to do self-regulation in Spanish. Self-regulation is self-regulation. Self-awareness, social awareness is the same in English as it is in Spanish. So once you learn that in your native language, representing all of the culture and beliefs and traditions that go with that, you know it in that other language. And then strengthening family relationships. I do want to say that it does behoove you, if you do have other cultures represented in your classroom, to study up on them a little bit, because there are some whatever sayings or things that that we use in the English language that don't translate well. A colleague was telling me once that she was talking to a parent from another country, and she said, "Your child is lovely. Your child is just lovely." Now, when a teacher says that, they're usually saying they're wonderful, they're well behaved. They're not saying lovely as in pretty or cute. They're meaning behaviorally. And this mother said, "Yes, I know that. How is her behavior?" And so I think a lot of times we use things and say things that a lot of our parents, if they are from a different language, do not understand. One of the things that is I have gone on my journey of cultural diversity and being aware is I'm a very hands-on person. It's been several years before the pandemic since I've been to Nebraska to work with you all individually. But if you were at any of those trainings, I work the room. I walk around. I'll walk up behind you, and if I'm talking to you, I'll put my hands on your shoulder, or I'm just a touchy-feely person. Well, there are some cultures and just people who they don't want me in their personal space. They don't want me putting my hand on their shoulder or things like that. And again, in some cultures, that is a huge taboo. And so at each year, as you get new children, it is important that you just do a quick little search and study on, are there any of those kinds of taboos that you need to be aware of? Now, I don't know if you all have heard of the cultural competency spectrum, but I want you to think about this and think really hard about it. This probably was a excellent attitude towards for me to go through several years ago. And notice I used the word spectrum. And what we know with the spectrum, the color spectrum, the autism spectrum, any kind of spectrum, is that there can be people along, or colors along that whole line, because everybody is at different stages and different degrees and various points along that spectrum. So I'm going to go through these, and I want you to think honestly, and if you feel comfortable, sharing when we get done, you can. If you don't, you just want to keep it private, that's perfectly fine too. But I'm going to explain these as we go through. So on this cultural competency, the very first step is cultural awareness. Cultural awareness is that understanding of differences between you and the people from other countries or backgrounds, especially differences in attitudes and values. And so that's the very first step, is just recognizing, yep, he's from Africa. He's different than I am. They have different attitudes and different values. So just recognizing that we all have differences in attitudes and different values. So that's the very first, it's just recognizing it. That makes me think of one of the things that I think has been misrepresented or misunderstood a lot is, and before I did this big study, I was guilty of saying, I don't see color. I don't see color. It doesn't matter to me if my children are black or brown or, white or polka dotted. I just see all my children. Well, what we know now is that we do want to see color. We do want to see color because we want to see every unique child. And I want to know the special things that make that brown child that speaks Spanish or maybe doesn't speak Spanish or is from another country or maybe isn't from another country. What makes that child unique? What makes that Black child unique? What are the cultures of that child that make him unique? And so it's not that we are seeing color in a negative way, but we do want to recognize that we're all different and not that we're all this, whitewashed class of children. So that's the very first step. So the second step is cultural sensitivity. So we've gone from just awareness, yep, we're different, to now a little bit of sensitivity. Being aware that cultural differences and similarities exist, but not assigning a value, not saying it's positive, not saying it's negative, not saying it's better or worse or right or wrong. Not saying like, don't you think it's weird? I mean, don't you think it's weird that they always take their shoes off when they come in the house? Don't you think that's kind of weird? No, it's not good or bad, positive, negative, right or wrong, weird, not weird. It just is. That's part of their culture. That's what that particular person does. And this right here, this cultural sensitivity is something that I have been guilty of. And to this day, with years of training, I still find myself when I am exposed or introduced to a different cultural norm or something that I'm completely unfamiliar with, I find myself just for a second thinking, okay, that's weird. And then having to stop myself and thinking, it's not weird. Exactly, Patty, it is. It's so hard. Like like the mom that one of you all shared about putting your child, leaving their child at the end of the hall, for a split second, I would probably think, okay, that's so weird, or that's so wrong. What if they're, abducted or, whatever. And so I think the thing that I want you to remember is that, Penny, it is extremely hard. And so this is lifelong work. And I think the growth is in us recognizing it and saying, oh, wait, Teddy, stop. It's not right or wrong. That's just what they believe. And then if it is something that could lead to danger, obviously leaving their child in the car, especially, in Texas in the summer when they run in, the child would be dead by the time they got back from the grocery store. And so recognizing that and addressing it with them, not in that belief is wrong, but the danger that could come of it living in this area or something like that. Does that make sense? All right, so we have awareness and then sensitivity, trying to learn and be sensitive and not pass judgment on it, just recognize it, to cultural competence. And this is having an awareness of one's own belief and cultural identity. And that's why you guys have to reflect on your beliefs, your values, your lived experiences. And if you have another culture that enters in, how that all comes into it. Your own cultural identity and views about difference, the ability to learn and build on the varying, those pictures are coming up the rest, community norms of students and their families, and the ability to understand as well as celebrate the differences that make each student unique. And so I think that is where a lot of us are, is recognizing where we are, and then trying to learn all about the varying cultures that are represented in our own classroom with our students and their families, and trying to understand them. Like my colleague whose family used the baby boards, that's not the official name, but to calm the baby down and for nap time. But instead of saying, yeah, they do that, don't you think that's weird, to your coworker, but saying, tell me more. What is the belief behind that? What's the tradition behind that? And trying to understand, as well as celebrating the differences that make each of us unique. And then the last one is cultural humility. Oops, hold on. And this goes beyond competence. And this is that lifelong learning and critical self-reflection, addresses the imbalance of power and develops institutional accountability. And the reason why it's a lifelong learning and critical self-reflection is that every year you might have a child with new lived experiences or a new culture. And so you're back at square one of learning about that culture and the traditions and the norms and things like that, and how to weave that into your classroom. So it's a continuing lifelong thing. And because none of us are perfect, as I told you, I still find myself thinking, that's so weird. And I have to, kind of do a mental slap and say, it's not weird. It's just, it's different than what you are accustomed to. And so, and then beginning to address the imbalance of power and developing institutional accountability. Now, if you remember when several sessions ago, we talked about the cultural wealth or the assets that your families have and that we all have. And one of those assets was resistance capital, where you fight for equality, you fight for injustices. And remember, the little key was that not only do you fight for justice for yourself, but for other people. And so when you have reached cultural humility, and I'm just throwing this out there as an example, because I also know that money comes into play. But let's say your center, you have English and Spanish speaking families. Is everything that is sent home in English also sent home in Spanish? And so one example of developing institutional accountability or addressing the imbalance of power is going to the powers that be and saying, hey, half of our population are Spanish speakers. We need to be making sure that everything we send home in English goes home in Spanish. Now, that's tricky to do. The school district that I left 10 years ago, their Spanish population had been growing and growing and growing and growing and growing and growing. And when the time I left, it was 50-50 English and Spanish. They still didn't send things home automatically in English and Spanish. They just now last year got their Spanish website set up. And so changing that institutional accountability and addressing that imbalance of power and recognizing and honoring all of your families takes time and takes change, because you're working with systems and you're working with budgets. But that is when you know you have reached cultural humility. Or when you go and say, all of our meetings are in English. None of our Spanish speaking or whatever language families come to the meetings because we don't have a translator. How can we address having a translator for our meetings if we want our second language speakers to feel important and feel part of the group and things like that? So I'm going to stop talking here. Well, now I'm going to do one last slide. And so the benefits of being culturally competent for our children, those benefits are, to move y'all's pictures again out of the way, it closes the achievement gap, because we are recognizing that children are children. They are all unique. They are all bringing their unique gifts. We are taking the time to get to know everything about that child and that family. And we're just setting the same expectations for all of our children. They feel part of the class and they feel extremely valued. For us, the reason why we want to be culturally competent, or at least working towards that, is it leads to a lot more effective teaching. And it enables us to connect to life experiences. Think of how fun it would be if you just, one activity that I like to do in training when we're in person is give everybody a little square, like a little quilt square of paper. You could do this with your families and say, draw your little square, 3 things that are important to you as a family. And then you tape all the squares together so you have a paper quilt, but they share what are those things that are important? What are those life experiences? And I have done that with families, and you get such a little window into their lives of, wow, they value, going to Sunday school. Don't ever have a meeting or something on a Sunday morning because they're not going to be there. They don't do Little League. They don't do anything on Sunday morning because that going to church is a huge part of who they are. Or Christmas, or whatever, or their grandma or whatever. So when we can start connecting and relating to each other through our life experiences, we're just all better people for it. And then we're better equipped to reach out and help families. When you have grown culturally, you have such a wider library of resources that you can use to help families, and you have an understanding of how to help them better. And also, by the way, just as a blah thing, it helps you meet accountability requirements. All of us are in programs where you have to take, diversity training or, whatever. And so when you do that, not only does it make you a better educator, it meets those accountability standards. So let's talk about your reflecting on that. I'm going to go back to the spectrum here. We'll just hit it in the middle with the cultural competence. And so we have awareness, sensitivity, competence, and humility. So this is a safe place. So let's talk about where you find yourself. And my guess is that you're going to find yourself, you're going to be able to share examples of where you're here on some things, and here on some things, and here on some things. So let's share. You guys share.
Hetty, I'm just going to speak from kind of an experience that I'm involved in now, and Tracy can probably add to this too, but the local community that both Tracy and I are in is very diverse, but it's small. And as we are thinking of growth to support our families who, for instance, need just like quality childcare needs, is that, I don't know where everybody on the team is as far as cultural awareness and sensitivity and competence and humility, but I see as we're going through this process that eventually we're all going to have to get to humility, because to make people feel welcome, and I don't want to say make people, so people do feel welcome when they come. So they feel like where their child is a safe place where they can have a communication experience with somebody who may speak their own language. And that as communication's coming back to them, it's something that they can trust, where their child is through the day. And I think trust is huge and relationship building is huge. So everybody has to get to the point of humility somehow. And I feel like our parents and some of our young community members who have gone through the education system and have graduated and are dual language learners will be an important piece to this, because they went through the education system. They're able to have that kind of experience of the language of English, but also being able to bring their culture sensitivity to what might offer. But just thinking like how we get to that and how important our parents will be for this. And I just want to bring it back to family engagement to say, I think when we're thinking of how this could take place in family engagement opportunities, is that allowing our parents that are part of this to share their cultural diversity with everyone. So whether that's a cultural diversity night or a cultural diversity day, and this is the day of this month that we're going to have a parent come talk about their experience in, say, Somalia and how they came to America and all of the different things that are important to them as families for cultural, just how they were raised, how they want to raise their children and how they fit into where they are now. and allowing everyone to hear that story, not just the other Somali families.
Right.
And that will be, I think just building the trust level on that. And one more thing, and I'm sorry, I don't want to take up so much time, but I keep going back to our family engagement piece on our 3-part series before. We were talking about, potentially our families who don't even read or write the language that they speak. And I keep thinking about, that's when you bring a family into maybe if you can communicate what you're asking families to do, and they can say it in their language, and you videotape them and you can send that video out so that they don't necessarily have to read or write it. It's in their language. And then there's a connection to that person to say, if you have any questions, let me know. And they kind of be that ambassador for you to help people feel welcome. I don't know, but
no, I love that. And I think another culture, if you want to call it that I think that we ignore is the culture of poverty or generational poverty. And one thing that my daughter, who, is my daughter, so she's been ingrained in this since, she was born, but she's a kindergarten teacher, and she had a child who kept taking a pencil, scissors and crayons home, like at the end of every day a couple years ago. And she was like, Mom, what's his deal? Because they have community supplies. All the tables have community supplies. And every day he, someone would say, so-and-so has a pair of scissors, so-and-so has crayons. And so she said, I don't want to accuse him of stealing, but what's his deal? So I said, well, I would just, maybe talk to his mom, find out what's going on. Well, come to find out, he didn't have those things at home. She bought them for school, and he wanted to make sure that he didn't lose them because he'd never had that before. So he was taking them home every night for safekeeping. Now, what she missed or didn't see was that he was bringing them back too. But he was taking them home too. And so that's part of a culture of scarcity where children many times are not stealing for the sake of stealing because they're bad kids, but it's because they don't have it at home, or they're afraid they won't get it back if they leave it at school. And so I think that, just really trying to look at all of our families. And I think, and again, I know I was, especially if I was tired or whatever, I would always kind of jump, maybe not the worst scenario, but I would always jump to the child was at fault, or, what's he doing, instead of thinking, wait a minute, maybe there's something else going on here. Maybe there's something that I don't understand. One last example that I will share, and then if anybody else wants to share, is I had to learn early on that the Black community, the Black children come from a culture of storytelling. Now think about when you were reading a read aloud to your children. Do you want them to sit there quietly until you stop and pause and ask your question? Or is it okay for them to give a running commentary of, if you're reading Goldilocks and the Three Bears, and I would have my Black children would say, oh, don't go in that house. Oh, your mama's going to be mad. I wouldn't go in there. Oh, girl, don't you go in that door. And before I had done any kind of learning about culture, I would say, we're not talking while I'm reading, boys and girls. You need to be listening. Well, that is a very white American school system way of thinking. That's my culture. That's my lived experience. And so understanding that they come from a storytelling culture where everybody's entering into the story and contributing to the story, just adds richness to the story. Now, where you have to decide is, can you honor that? And can you allow that to happen? Or do you have to meet in the middle and say, when the book is facing this way, you're listening. And if I turn the book the other way with the picture showing out, then you can comment and talk or whatever. But you have to recognize they're not just blurting out to get on your nerves. That is a cultural thing that they are bringing to the table. So we are just right at time, but I do want anybody to either put in the chat or share maybe one thing that you heard today that you want to take forward, you want to kind of mull it over, or that resonated with you, that you thought that really hit home for me. Don't be shy. This is our safe place, remember?
Well, for me, it's kind of like what we do now here at the center. We have a lot of families who come from different places, from different countries. So it's really nice, like now that you're like reading all this and learning about this, because sometimes we go into these homes and we talk about, we give our modules, we give our lessons and everything. And some of these families work differently. And it's really nice when we work with these families and we bring their traditions in there, because I always try to like listen to their traditions, to how they were raised, you know, because I know that every family is different. Not every family is the same as how the book might say, do this and do that, but they might do things differently. So I always try to like to tell them that they can make it unique their own way. If they want to bring in this, if they want to make their own little like ingredients and into the whole bucket list, they can. So I really like learning about the whole cultural thing, because it's very important for someone to feel that there's a space for them, because I know growing up and coming to this country too, going to a place where I was also accepted was really nice. And I know it would have been really hard for me to go to a place where I wasn't accepted or I wasn't feeling like I was fit in. So I know that the culture thing is very special for people, and to me that is very important. And I try to apply it into my families and with their kids too. I try to discuss it once in a while with them too, because I think it's very important.
Good, thank you. And Penny said she wants to work on her cultural sensitivity and look up things that might be taken differently in Ukraine. Good. I think that's a fascinating thing. And Abby said not to judge a child because they act different from us. We have to embrace their culture and be open to learn about them and make them feel welcome and loved. And I just want to encourage you guys to keep doing the hard work that you're doing. I know that you love every single one of your families, but I will tell you that the more work you do on learning about the cultures and the lived experiences and things from your families, the richer your class is going to be, but also the more involved your families are going to be. Going back to that family engagement piece, is because you will be sending the message, you are welcomed here and we want you part of our program, part of our classroom. So the next session, we're going to be talking about what that looks like in the classroom, and where are you going to get all these resources from Ukraine and all of these places that you need to get. So have a great rest of your day and a great rest of your week. And just don't beat yourself up if you're not at the humility level. I go back and forth, up and down that spectrum on any given day. So give yourself some grace. Bye.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.